but Mysterio would kick out again. Mysterio would get Eddie in positioning for the 619 and would hit it. Mysterio would look for the West Coast pop, but Eddie would then counter into a powerbomb, followed up by a pin attempt with Mysterio kicking out again. Eddie would look to hit another tilt-a-whirl, but Ray would counter into a Hurricane Rana and pin attempt and would get the 3 count. So Rey Mysterio would beat Eddie and get the win in this opening match. Following, there would be a showing of sportsmanship between the two partners. Mysterio's victory on this night would also help plant the seeds for his feud with Eddie Guerrero throughout the next several months of 2005. A pretty good opener. Really like this. Of course, Rey Mysterio would pick up the win. 3 stars and a quarter for me on this one. Perfect choice for the opener. And yeah, it's just great to see these two have a Mania match. Of course, they had faced off in the past before and would go on to face each other for the next several months, with this Eddie eventually just be determined to finally beat Ray at all costs, and would even bring they'd even do the Dominic angle and whatnot, and just making it really personal. So then next we'd have the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, which would feature Kane, Chris Benoit, Christian, Edge, Chris Jericho, and Shelton Benjamin. So this would be the first ever Money in the Bank match in history, of course, for many years to come. At Mania, there'd be plenty of Money in the Bank matches, and then 2010, they would even add the Money in the Bank pay-per-view event. And then the legacy, I guess, would just live on. So this would all begin with the 5 other participants looking to attack Kane during his entrance before the bell would sound. Then they'd all make their way back down to the ringside area. Benoit and Benjamin would do a double suplex to Kane on the floor. Christian would immediately try to grab a ladder, but as he was trying to do so, and as he's trying to put it in the ring, Jericho would sneak around the corner and would send the ladder catapulting back into Christian's face. Then the bell would sound. Jericho would do a bulldog on Shelton Benjamin, and then he'd slingshot over the top onto Edge. Then Christian would do his version of a springboard crossbody to the outside. Then Benjamin would do a tope con hilo over the top, taking out everyone on the outside. That was pretty. Then following that, Kane would make his way to the top rope and would dive off and attempt to wipe everyone out next. So it's like everyone at that point, I guess, is trying to outdo each other. Jericho, though, would hit a top rope drop kick, stopping that. Oh, wait, sorry. I skipped the part. Then back in the ring, Kane would grab a ladder and would hit everyone in sight that came near. Then Jericho would do a top rope drop kick, which would stop Kane from doing that. And then Jericho would grab the ladder. He'd hit Benjamin in the face with the ladder. He'd hit Edge with it, and then even dropping it on him, too. Then Chris Jericho would come back with a German suplex while Jericho was holding the ladder, which would send both Jericho and the ladder flying. Then Benoit would attempt to climb the ladder, and Kane would try to stop him by attempting to chokeslam him, but Benoit would prevent it and would get Kane in by the arm and trapping him into the crippler's crossface. Edge would try to get involved, but then he'd get into the crossface himself. Then Kane would grab the ladder and hit Benoit on the head with it. Ouch. He'd then take Benoit's arm, place it in between the ladder, and would try to just simply destroy it. After that, Edge would hit Kane with a spear. Then both Edge and Christian would each have a ladder and would sandwich Kane in between both of them. A little ENC moment. Of course, both men had plenty of experience in these kind of matches in the past, 2 of the very best. Then Shelton Benjamin would re-enter the picture with a springboard clothesline, taking down both Edge and Christian with a ladder. Then Christian would eat a spinning heel kick from Benjamin. Then Benjamin would be Irish whipped into a ladder in the corner. Then Edge would look to spear Benjamin into the ladder, but Shelton would counter it by doing a flapjack, sending Edge face first into the ladder. Then he'd follow up with a stinger splash to Edge in the corner with the ladder. Then Jericho, Christian, Benoit, and Edge would all fight on top of 3 ladders. Benjamin and Christian would be the first to go down. Then Jericho would crash and burn next. Then there was a T-bone suplex from Benjamin Edge off the ladder. Yeah, this is getting crazy now. And then I'm trying to keep up with this the best I can. Jericho would then try to climb up the ladder. There was another ladder that was set up, that was wedged in between. As Jericho was at the top, Benjamin would run up the ladder and would clothesline Jericho off. The athleticism of just Benjamin is insane, especially at this time. I mean, how this guy didn't get a main event level push or whatnot is just beyond me. Granted, I get he may have not been the best of the promos and whatnot, but with how good he was in the ring and like how much talent he had, you could have gotten around with the mouthpiece or whatnot. Like, to me, that it didn't really make any sense that they weren't able to do that. So then next, Kane would come back and would try to choke slam Benjamin to the outside, but Benjamin's foot would get caught in between the ropes. Then Tomko, I forgot to mention that he was in Christian's corner, would enter the ring and clothesline Kane. He would try to help Christian up the ladder and would try to help him win. Kane sees this and would send Tomko out of the ring. Then Kane would tip the ladder over, and Christian at the top would send Christian flying over the top to the outside onto the top of Tomko, taking both men out of the picture. Then Jericho and Kane would battle on top of the ladder, but both men would fall off. Kane would go to just fall down on the mat below. Jericho would end up falling out of the ring. Benoit would then take a ladder with one good arm and climb up to the top and do the diving headbutt to Kane below. Kind of a little hard to watch, not going to lie. Would have been hindsight. Just especially if you happen to catch the recent one of the recent, I guess they came out with a new episode like the other day. But when you if you caught the recent Dark Side of the Ring documentary, and if you haven't seen it yet, I'd highly recommend it. If you watch that, then you know what I'm talking about. So then Benoit would climb up the ladder and try to retrieve the briefcase, but Kane would sit up and would go up the ladder to try to stop Benoit. Then Benoit would be able to fight him off by headbutting him over and over again, and eventually Kane would just fall off. It would appear that Benoit may have this thing won, but then out of nowhere, Edge would appear with the steel chair and would hit Benoit in the bad arm with it, sending him to fall off the ladder. And then Edge, as the only one left, would then climb the ladder and retrieve the briefcase, making him the winner of the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, the first Mr. Money in the Bank. All around a highly entertaining match. This really set the bar high for many years to follow. This also future revolutionized ladder matches as well, and created a concept and gimmick that, as I said earlier when talking about this match, we still see it to this day. So, props up for that. So Edge would be the winner. 4 stars and a quarter for this one for me. Great match. The next we'd have the Eugene segment. Eugene was out at this time due to an injury, but nonetheless, he'd find his way on into the show. He'd talk about his favorite WrestleMania moment, and then he'd say being there is the greatest moment of his life. Then out came Muhammad Hassan Davari, interrupting him, drawing massive boos from the crowd. Hassan says he's out there because he's upset that he's been left off WrestleMania. He pretty much says that since he doesn't have one, he's going to create a WrestleMania moment of his own. Then he attacks Eugene and places him in the camel clutch. And as he's doing this, Real American hits, and then out comes Hulk Hogan. Keep in mind that the night before he had been inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. He comes out to a massive pop from the live audience. He hits the ring and immediately is attacked by both Hassan and Davari. He does fight both of them off. Davari would hit him from behind with the steel chair, but Hogan would no-sell it and would send Davari out of the ring. Then the music would hit again. He'd pose in front of the crowd. They'd show his family in attendance, and yeah, that's that. Next, we'd have Undertaker and Randy Orton, the Legend versus the Legend Killer, one-on-one, a singles match. The 12-0 undefeated streak was on the line. As now that I'm starting to think about it a bit more, I'm thinking that it was here in a way they started getting a bit more serious with the streak in terms of stature. I still think, also that the Batista match had a lot to do with that and really brought it up to the main level. But I feel like this match they were starting to make a bit more big of a deal with the streak being intact. But the video package previewing the match was also done very well. As I said, I feel like I see this every time with the old pay-per-views and old shows that gets discussed on here. But what can I say? And they're still very good to this day. But I feel like the Ruthless Aggression era had the best video packages, hands down. Before the match would begin, though, we have to talk about Undertaker's entrance. By far one of his greatest ever. I mean, they didn't have him walk down to the ring. He was literally floating. It doesn't get any cooler than that. As the match starts, Orton would try. He would try to avoid getting cornered by Taker. He'd slap him. This would obviously set Taker off, and he would then try to show the advantage in the power game. That is Taker. Then Orton would hit a picture-perfect dropkick on Taker as he was coming off the ropes. He'd even hit a back body drop as well. Orton would catch it right and then would be cornered by Taker. He starts unloading on him with some strikes. Then Undertaker would send Orton into the corner and would charge after him. Then Orton would flip over into a schoolboy roll-up, resulting in a 2 count. Orton would then look to hit the RKO with Taker, but Taker would catch him and then dump him to the floor outside. He'd follow up with his famous leg drop on the ring apron, and then Taker back inside in the ring with Orton. He'd go for old school and hit it, but didn't really execute it the right way that he usually does. Then Taker would go for the running boot in the corner, but Orton would move out of the way with Orton being hung up on the ropes. Orton with Undertaker on the floor now would start wailing on him and would send him back into the ring. Then they both brawl for a little. Taker would clothesline Orton. Orton would look for a back body drop, but Taker would counter with the DDT. Nice. Taker would charge at Orton with a couple of running strikes. He'd go for snake eyes, but Orton would get out of it. Crowds heavily against Orton, as you'd expect, and as they'd probably want, of course. Then Taker would take control and would put Orton in a Dragon Sweeper, a move he's used before in the past. He doesn't have the Hell's Gate in his arsenal yet, so I guess, he used to do that for a period of time. But Orton would fight out of it. Taker would come off the ropes, and Orton would get him in a sleeper hold. But Taker would reverse out of this with a suplex. Taker would charge off the ropes again, but Orton would counter with a side slam. And then Orton would then attempt the 10 punches in the corner and would pose up in the corner before hitting the 10th one. But Taker would take advantage of this and would attempt to hit the last ride, but Orton would counter it with an RKO attempt, but then Taker would shove him off, sending him into official Earl Hebner. Undertaker would then hit the last ride with the referee down. Cowboy Bob Orton would interfere and hit Undertaker with his famous cast, taking him down. Then Bob Orton would drag the official over with Randy on top. Hebner would go to count the pin, but Taker would kick out at 2. Undertaker would knock off Bob Orton from the apron. Then Taker would go for a choke slam, but Orton would counter midair into an RKO. Great counter. I think that was one of the best early examples of him doing the RKO out of nowhere kind of deal. So yeah, I think that was a good early example of that, and still I think one of the better RKO counters even for the time. He'd go for the cover, but Undertaker would kick out at 2. Orton would then signal for the end and would attempt to hit the Tombstone Piledriver on Undertaker, but then Taker would reverse it and hit the Tombstone himself and would get the 3 count for the win. All in all, a really good match that I really enjoyed. Of course, Undertaker and Batista would continue their feud later on in the year, and Cowboy Bob Orton would get more involved. But for Taker's WrestleMania matches, this might not be in the top 5 or anything, but it's definitely one that I always will remember. So, of course, Undertaker would win here. 3.5 stars would be the rating I'd give this one. Then next, we'd have the Women's Championship match. We'd have Trish Stratus defending against Christy Hemme with Lita in her corner. This match would all come to be when Christy would pose on the cover of Playboy magazine, and they would sell this as, I guess, Trish was supposed to be jealous of her because of the success Christy would have in such a short period of time since winning the 2004 Diva Search. For me, I don't really get why she'd even care, honestly. She's the women's champion. Christy was just on a magazine cover is how I view it, honestly. But Christy would then challenge Trish for the women's title and would have Lita in her corner as she'd be the one who would help train Christy to prepare for this match. But, not much to say about this, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. The match didn't receive a lot of time. It'd go back and forth a bit, but Christy would hit the twist of fate, which she'd learned from Lita, but Trish would kick out. Trish would go for a roll-up, then Christy would go for a roll-up on Trish, then she'd kick out, then Trish would hit the chick kick, pin, and the match would be over. Trish would retain the women's title, 1-star rating, moving on. Interpromotional matchup. Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. Once again, prior to the match,